My name is John Clifford. I've been responsible for organising and facilitating this morning's session. Firstly, let me thank you all for joining us this morning in what should be a very, very insightful session. I am joined this morning by two of my colleagues. I'm joined by Daniel Ramis Eklund, who is our Senior Consultant and Product Owner at PXM Certify Comply. And also joined by Head of the Practice, Jacob Stigard Sorensen. Jacob.
Good morning, and good morning all. Thanks for taking the time out of busy calendars. We will today be looking first a fly into PXM Soft as an organization, what we do and why we do what we do, and then a very high-level introduction to Certify Comply. That is the topic of today's webinar, and then Daniel will give you a introduction or a presentation of the application, after which we'll shortly touch upon or lightly touch upon what does an implementation look like and what are the things going into implementation of Certify Comply, and then rounding up with a Q&A session if relevant. PXM Soft is a organization spun out of Gaudi Group with a focus on creating value through applications to primarily SuccessFactors, but in general to the SAP product suite altogether. We see ourselves as the go-to partner when it comes to maximizing your investment in SuccessFactors. So I think we all do know, and maybe that's why we are in the webinar today, that there are areas within SuccessFactors that is not covered by the standard functionality and is not intended to be covered by the standard functionality. And that is where we come in providing apps that fills the gaps, as we like to say in marketing terms at least. So we see ourselves as a real alternative to some of the more established leading brands out there, insofar that we deliver high-fit solutions to your SuccessFactors environment, and we do it at a lower cost than we tend to see some of these more better-known brands do. It's important to say that with PXM Soft, you actually engage directly with us. There is fully white, watertight shutters between us and Gaudi. Even though we've spun out of Gaudi, Gaudi is just a partner like other resellers of our products. So even though that you might be in a SuccessFactors setup where there's multiple vendors, or you have different vendors than what we spun out of, you can safely engage with PXM Soft. We own our own product IP, meaning that we're able to be quite transparent when it comes to pricing. We are quite easy to work with and agile when it comes to our solution design, and our roadmaps is very much driven by customer inputs. And we can control this and navigate this because we actually do own the IP. Currently, we have 5 main products within our product portfolio. We have a product called Attract and Hire that is a solution or an application tailored around frontline managers and the experience and the process of supporting recruiting for factory managers, for store managers, or for managers who actually are in frontline handling the recruiting from the first engagement with the candidate all through a contract generation happens with the candidate sometimes within the matter of minutes. We have a comprehensive document management solution that allows you to digitalize your document management flows within your HR processes, from document creation all the way through to archiving, and obviously with all the bells and whistles going into compliance and retention and so on. We have an application called Time Tracking Plus, and essentially this is us going head to head with some of the bigger time shift scheduling tools in the market, providing our customers with a lightweight shift and demand planning tool to support some of these unsupported time tracking processes within SuccessFactors. Certify and Comply that we are looking at today, audit control, license to operate, skills management, all the operational sides of competency and skills management that Daniel will be taking us through today. And then the newest kit in class, org chart and modeling. Essentially, it's a drag and drop modeling application that allows you to design within SuccessFactors your organization for the future, trying out different scenarios, trying out what if we move this organization here, if we move these people here, how do we commit that to SuccessFactors? So all of these applications support your overall value of SuccessFactors. When we look at PXMsoft Certify and Comply specifically, what you'll be seeing today is a tool that allows you to really power the compliance elements of your HR processes, securing essentially at the end of the day your business's license to operate, making sure that all your employees are skilled, are certified to do what you ask them to do. So that is the main sort of narrative around our application. It's a scalable application built on granular skills setup that allows you to a very detailed level control the skills and the competencies of your workforce. It's multimodal in the sense that you can work with many different kinds of components when it comes to skills, competencies, learning requirements, trainings, experience, and so on. But Daniel will take you through that. It's dynamic in the sense that you can continuously grow your business by assigning, assessing, and closing critical gaps, making sure that you at all time is operationally excellence and ready to do audits, ready to actually show the world that you and your workforce is able to do what you say that you're able to do. And all of this is built within the flow of work, so it's integrated with SuccessFactors, it's integrated with the modules, learning, performance, role-based permissions, etc. So this is the high-level introduction to Certify and Comply, and then I'll hand it over to my good colleague Daniel that will take you through a demo of the solution.
Thank you, Jacob, and hello everyone. Good morning. I will be sharing my screen, and hopefully this is something that is at least somewhat recognizable to the majority of you, the SuccessFactors homepage. And what I'm going to be diving into here is these 4 tiles, which are a part of Certify and Comply. I'm going to start us off in this one called administration, because it gives you a good idea of what it is you're about to see once we look at the actual people in here. So in Certify and Comply, we have 4 general roles. We have what we call administrators, we have what we call certifiers, we have managers, and we have learners. And the order I set those in is also the order of importance, essentially. So the administrators are the people who are allowed to manage the entire catalog, and they are the ones that fix data when it's wrong. They are the ones that essentially ensure that people have the right options available to them. So what we are looking at here in the top, we have 4 different tabs here. We have a local, unclassified, national, and global, and these are classifications of some different competencies that we've set up. For right now, I've only set these up in global because it is not really relevant what locale we're working in. This just helps us distinguish who is responsible for these competencies if we're working in multiple countries or with multiple locations where the competencies may differ. All of the competencies I've set up in here contain some competencies within them. So this parent entity called adaptability is actually what we call a functional competency. Typically, this will refer to a specific area of work. An example I like to use is, for example, in a warehouse, you may have forklift drivers. So you may have a functional competency called forklift. That does not necessarily mean that having this competency as forklift means that you are eligible to drive the forklift, but it ensures that every competency that has to do with driving a forklift is stored in at least somewhat the same place. Within here, There are 5 items. You can see one of them has a very long string just to see how far we could push it. But in here, there's a little star, and when I hover over it, it says star rating. And that's because this competency is rated on a star rating basis. If I open this action menu here, click Edit Competency, you can see that I also have the option to change what type of rating is this competency. This means that when I apply this competency to a person in our system, they are going to be rated on whatever scale we've set of stars. Are they a 1 star in adjusting to new equipment, 2 stars, 3 stars, all the way up to 10 stars is the current limit. Of course, we could always increase it given that it is our own product. But if I was to change this to a yes or no, then the users can no longer be rated on a scale of, say, 0 to 5. Now they have to either have this ability or they don't have this ability. The last option here, or second to last option, the fourth one is a bit of a special one. Second to last option here is task-based rating. And this essentially functions the same way as a yes or no competency. But rather than just being marked as yes or no, the user has to complete a set of tasks in order for this to count as a yes. This is especially useful for on-the-job training where you may have people who need to operate, say, a crane, and they need to prove that they know the movements and the restrictions and similar that is possible for this crane. When they have then completed all of these different movements or different sets of objectives, proven that they know what they're doing, they're competent, each of these tasks can be marked off. Once all of them are completed, it counts as a simple yes competency. The last one here, LMS rating, is a bit of a special one. This is an integration to the SuccessFactors learning module. That means that a user who wants to be rated in this has to complete a course in the learning module. So rather than someone going onto their profile within our application and selecting you have this competency, the user themselves goes into the learning module, if it's applicable in the system, of course, and completes a course. If we say that we have a course in Denmark, for example, called Danish brain surgery, if the user that has this competency applied to them completes the course with this ID, then their competency within our application will also be marked as complete with the same completion date. And if there is an expiry, then that will go with it. We do have the option to override that expiry and set that, for example, if we have in our learning module system, there's no expiry set, but we actually want to be reminded of recertifying this course every year. We're able to set up that you should be warned about this once a year. You can also set a manual expiry warning. We have a default setup that is 60 days on our system here, meaning that 60 days before any expiry, we start seeing warnings for that person. But if we want to override it, say we have a course that takes a long time to book a specific time for, we can give a longer warning period. Last option here, not applicable, means that we are able to select that for certain users, they do not need to complete this task, either because they are unable or because it's irrelevant to their work position. If we go to the forklift example again, we may have someone who is in a wheelchair, but they are still working in the warehouse, so they still have the forklift skill applied to them, but they're not able to drive it. Then we can set that this is able to be marked as not applicable, and on that person we can say it's not applicable to this person. With the other ratings, we can of course also set these expiry methods. So we can say that a yes or no rating, this could be a certificate, expires after 1 year, and we have some manual expiry warning on it. We also have this period down here that says start date and end date, and this essentially marks what is the effective date that this competency is applicable. If we have a competency that needs to be proven within some form of regulation, but that regulation is running out at some point, let's say that there's a regulation running out at the end of 2024, then we can set up that the end date for this competency is in 2024. All of our tracking from that point on will then not include this competency because it is outside of its effective dated scope. The same goes for the start date, of course, that if we looking at data before the 1st of January 2020, this competency will not be included in any of it because it is not relevant at that time. We also have these information link options down here. we can set in a link for our users that when they look at the competency for themselves called adjusting to new equipment, then they will have the option of clicking a link. This could be a guide for what do you need to complete to actually have this competency approved. It could be a guide to link to SharePoint or similar for some documentation regarding it, or to a guide or something else. The other two options, document linkage and document storage, enables users to upload or link to a document. This could be a certificate. So if you've taken a certificate that is stored on a public website or on your SharePoint, you will be able to link to it if this is enabled. And otherwise, if this document storage is enabled, you would be able to upload, for example, a PDF file or an image file for that competency so that the people rating you can see when was this achieved. A lot of the options that I just went over for the individual competency is also applicable to the entire functional competency. So in here, if I go to edit, you'll see that we also have this effective dated period. And of course, the competencies within here would need to adhere within these bounds. So we cannot have a competency within that goes beyond the year that is set here. And we cannot have one that starts before the date set here because it would not follow proper logic. We also have what's called a group. So this is just a definition of what type of skill is this. It could also be defined based on business area or department or similar. So working in a warehouse or blue collar versus white collar, or working in the factory floor versus logistics and similar is what we see it used as with customers. You can also select the icon. This is more of just a graphical thing that we can select what should the icon in our catalog be here. If we want to set a hierarchy of these skills, we have the option to set in parent information. So we have the functional competency here called adaptability, but perhaps we want to set up that you are only allowed to progress in adaptability once you have completed another competency. We can do that by setting a parent relationship here. So perhaps we can set up that you need to have completed manual dexterity before you're allowed to move on to adaptability. Now you'll see the group was also changed because manual dexterity resides within hard skills. And we can set up dependencies on this. With dependency enabled, it means that we have to have at least one rating for each competency within manual dexterity in order to start receiving ratings in adaptability. Without parent dependency, we're able to receive ratings in both manual dexterity and adaptability at the same time, so essentially in parallel. This parent information will allow us to set up an elaborate tree of skills where we can mark out a person's learning path essentially. So you may start working in a warehouse, then you move on to forklift, then you move on to logistics, then you move on to safety and so on in a certain order or in a certain hierarchy. The other facet of this competency catalog is down here in the bottom and it's called competency profiles. So if you recall in the beginning, I mentioned that a good example that I like to use for this is if we had forklift and within the skill, we have the different elements that make you eligible to use a forklift, but it might not make you eligible for forklift driver position. And that's where the competency profiles come in. So the competency profiles is a collection of minimum attributes you need to have for a certain position or a certain role. You see the one I've set up here is called environmental awareness tester. It has a very beautiful description that just says YAP. But in here, I've set up some different requirements for you to work as an environmental awareness tester. The majority of these skills come from a functional competency that's called environmental awareness. You would, for example, need a 4-star rating out of 6 in handling hazardous materials safely, and some other rating requirements within here for minimizing environmental impact and so on. But all of these are different from if you were just to measure this skill of a person. So we essentially have two facets of measuring, either against the maximum possible skill or against what is required for a certain role. We also see that there's one skill added from something else called attention to detail, where you need to be able to double check completed tasks. And that is also a 4-star rating. And although attention to detail actually has 5 different competencies within it, we're only using one of them for this profile. It also means that whoever we assign this profile to will have both attention to detail assigned to them automatically, and they will have environmental awareness assigned to them automatically. Although we might not need to rate every skill within attention to detail, we can complete our profile here called Environmental Awareness Tester. The icons that we have here denote whether or not this is a required attribute of the role or if it is a desired attribute of the role. So this role essentially only requires that you have a 4-star rating in double checking completed task, and the rest is a desire that we have for this role, that you should be able to do this, but it's not necessarily a legal requirement. Of course, I could also add a separate line for each of these. Maybe I want to select a range saying we want you to have 4 stars, but you should have 3 stars in here. So I could add another line of the same competency, but with a different rating level. If we move over to another piece of this, so the actual user module, then we can see how this data actually looks like when it is in effect. So this module is something that is accessible to 3 of the roles that I talked about in the beginning, which is or actually all of the roles, because the administrator is also included. The first module here is only available if you are an administrator, while this module is not available. This module is not available to normal learners, certifiers, and so on. When I say certifier and manager and learner, we often have a lot of confusion with what does that actually mean. But in our system, a certifier is a person who is allowed to give ratings to people. That is a person who has skills of their own and is allowed to pass these skills on to other people. This could, for example, be a supervisor on a shop floor, on a factory floor, that has all of the necessary safety ratings to be able to rate other people on their ability to use the machinery. We have a variety of options available where we can say that you are allowed to rate even if you don't have the skill, or you're only allowed to rate if you have the skill. You're only allowed to rate up until the rating you yourself have, and so on. But in here, we essentially have an employee search option. So this is where we get our basic statistics on our employee. What I opened here was the manager search. So I am searching for learners who have a specific manager. In here, if I input the right name, I can find a manager who has learners under her. So this is Vanessa Wagner that I'm searching for, and I'm searching in the reports to filter. I can of course combine this with our other filters. So if I want to find her direct reports, but only in a specific location, then I could add a location in here. I think actually all of hers are in Berlin, so this would return an empty result. But we can combine these as we want to. I could also add multiple people in the reports to here. So if I want to see both her reports and someone else's reports, I could add both of them, and also further filter then on location, division, department, and so on. I also have the option to search for one or more specific people instead of searching by direct reports and so on, but I can just select them from here. The people you're seeing in these overviews that I'm opening are people that exist in SuccessFactors. Because we're directly integrating with SuccessFactors, it also means that we have the option of making use of the role-based permission systems. So we can choose who should have access to find who in the program here. When I click go, then we are going to retrieve the people that are the direct reports of Vanessa Wagner. And you can see she has 5 direct reports. On these employee cards, we have a variety of information available to us. First of all, this flag here denotes how far or how critical gaps do we have on their roles. So the roles I talked about before in the catalog set a bar that these people should be hitting. The less of these targets they're hitting, the more red will be filled out in this flag, so we know this person is lacking behind on what they should be able to do according to their job function. The other options we have here, there's an orange icon here on Thomas Erb, where when I hover over it, it says there's an upcoming expiry. Clicking this, I can see there's actually nothing. I guess it has been deleted or similar, or maybe it has moved on to actually being expired, which I guess is the case here. So we can see there's 2 things that Thomas Erb has been rated within that have expired on the 24th of September and on the 1st of September. And then when they were expired, he had a rating 4 and a rating 2. We can then choose to recertify these, effectively resetting the timer for when does this expire, or we can navigate into this competency for Thomas. So clicking this button takes me into Thomas's learner view, where I can see all of the skills that he has. Now we can see the one that pinged out here was conducting tests and assessments at a 2-star level, expired on the 1st of September. You can also see that it's likely expired because I changed the dating on the 2nd of September or similar. But we have the option to add a new rating. We can show the history of his ratings. When did he have what ratings? When were they expiring, and so on. And adding a new rating will require us, of course, to select at what level should this rating be, from when is it applicable, and then the expiry date is figured out based on our catalog. So if I select that he was actually rated on the 7th of October, then we should see all of this update accordingly. When we're looking at a person in here, we always have it split into these functional competencies, and these are the same that we saw in the catalog before. But out here we can see when was this actually applied to the person? When did they start receiving ratings? We can see that Thomas actually only started receiving ratings in attention to detail as of today, because it was or because he actually hasn't received any ratings yet, but he has a profile assigned to him that contains this. So looking at his profile, we see that he should be an environmental awareness tester. We can see what are the minimum requirements for him. And we can see he hasn't received any ratings yet, so there's no start date on the functional competency. As soon as we create a rating here, then the start date here will be locked in place. That is the effective date for his functional competency of attention to detail. We can see on the other skills that he has that there are two bars denoting 100% here and 83% here. Progress here means how far have you gotten in completing what you can in environmental awareness, and how well does it match what your job profile is. So you can see he has 100% progress because he has a rating in every comp. But he only has an 83% match because it is not at a high enough level for his role. Same can be said with equipment operation. He might have some ratings, but they're not fulfilling the role that he has. Therefore, it is 0%. The parental hierarchy I talked about in the catalog, we can see on him here by clicking roadmap. That takes us into a page where we need to select what type of skills do we want to see. I don't have a lot set up in terms of parental hierarchy in here. You can see it's all just on the same level. But if they were set up to be parents of each other, we would see a nice tree structure branching towards the right. So we can see once you're done with project management, you should start looking into equipment operation. Then you should start looking into mechanical aptitude and so on. If we want to assign a new skill to Thomas Herb, let's say he participated in a course or something and we need to show that he has completed the course, we can click the assign button down here and find the skill that we want to attach to him. Let's say we want to start measuring his basic math skills. If we had thousands of these, of course, we could filter them by group, or we could search for a specific one. We can also select from what date do we want to find these, but 10 of October is just fine for us. Adding this skill to Thomas means that we can start adding his actual competencies within it. I see, just like attention to detail, we do not yet have any ratings in here, but we're able to just start putting them in once we've added them. We can add a new rating, say when does this apply from. If I was Thomas, then I would also be able to request this rating from someone. So going to show certifiers in here, there's no one, so no one is eligible to rate this. But as Thomas, I would be able to request this from someone specific. I'll try to show that on my own profile in a moment. Other options we have when we're assigning and rating all of these people, is that we can select the people we've searched for. We can choose to mass competency assign these things. So if I want to assign basic math skills to multiple people at a time, then I have the option to do so in here. Rather than only assigning it to Thomas, now I'm assigning it to all 5 of these people at once. Once that has been added, or if they already had it, then I also have the option to mass competency rate. If I select basic math skills again, because now I know that all of them should have it, then I can go in and say, okay, we want to rate all of these people on their applying geometric principles. I want to rate Prachi here 2, Matthias at 3, Sandra 3, and so on. I can select for each of them what should the date of this rating be, respectively. I can also choose if this was, for example, a yes or no competency, or everyone completed this up to the same level. We did some sort of group training. I can choose to use the same rating for everyone. And as soon as I click somewhere here, then all of their ratings will adjust accordingly. Using the same rating for everyone also means that I have the option to use the same date for everyone. So if we are, say, in this group training scenario, then I can choose the date here and it adjusts everything else. We can see there's no expiry on this competency, hence the expiry date here is set to the maximum possible allowed by the normal date convention here. And that can also be changed. So if I want this to intentionally expire on another day, then I'm able to simply select that. And all of them will adjust accordingly. Note that changing the expiry date never changes the start date, but if there was expiry on this, then changing the start date would modify the expiry date automatically. If we jump into one of the other tabs here, because this is not the only way that we can search for these employees, then I have a filter set up already. You can see that it already filled in these functional competencies and it already filled in my reports too, and that's because I have a variant set up. And a variant is a saved set of criteria for what I want to be able to search for here. Opening here, you can see that I actually only have one. I've called it default, and this here denotes that this is also my default, meaning it's the one that opens when I open the screen. But also disable this, meaning that when I open this matrix page, then it will not fill in this by default beforehand. Clicking go here will generate a matrix containing all of these 4 functional competencies and showing it on behalf of the users that belong to Vanessa Wagner here. So we can see the same 5 people that we saw before denote each role. And in the top here, we have it split into our functional competencies, quality control, and within those we have all of the things that they can be rated for, so the actual competencies. In here we can see what rating each person has. There's a rating 2 out of 6 for conducting tests and assessments. There's a rating 4 on documenting quality issues and so on. And the yes/no competencies are marked as either an X or a check mark. If we go a little further here, you see there are some other icons here. There are some clock icons on some of them. And that's because Sandra here has been certified in implementing sustainable practices, but it has expired. So Sandra was eligible for this, but is currently not eligible for it, which lets us know that we should be recertifying Sandra in this skill. The same goes for Thomas down here, where he had a rating 4 out of 6, but it has expired, hence there's a clock icon on it. If these skills were not expired, but were instead approaching expiry, then these would be warning icons that lets us know that there is a rating here. It's still eligible, but it is approaching its expiry. This competency matrix essentially lets us find the people that are eligible for a job. It might not be that their role reflects it, but if we're looking for someone who is eligible to run a machine, let's say in the case of an absence of someone else, then we can use this matrix to find someone in a certain location or reporting to someone who is eligible for the job. We of course also have a bunch of options when it comes to exporting this. We can choose to export it only including what is their actual rating. Then we'll just get something similar to this matrix, except it will just say 2 instead of 2 out of 6 here, because we're not really interested in the maximum possible rating when we want to be able to modify this as later data. We can also choose to include the expiry date that comes with that rating, when was it rated, who rated it, and then we have this option called include total ratings. Include total ratings essentially counts how many of each rating do we have within a given skill. If we take this documenting quality issues, for example, then we would see that we have 4 people at rating 0 and 1 person at rating 4, and that would be reflected in the separate rows below these people in our export. It's a little more interesting if we look at a place where a lot of people are included in here. So for example, this one, we would see that we have 3 people with rating 2, and that would be reflected in its own row in the export. Moving to the last tab here, it's what's called the competency profile matrix. And again, I have a filter set up that already pre-filled with Vanessa's direct reports here. I'm going to choose to include desired. And if you recall, the desired competencies when we're talking about a role are the ones that are noted with this little blue shield. If I was to not include this desired tag, then I would only see ratings returning for those with the green tag here. So I would only be measuring against one competency in the case of this competency profile or role. Clicking go. the system goes in and looks at every single person who has a profile assigned here and what is the state of completion on that profile. Now we can see that neither Sandra nor Thomas complete their profile of environmental awareness tester. If we had multiple profiles applied to these people, then we would of course see them along the x-axis here. And if we had more people who had profiles applied to them, then we would see them along the y-axis. Clicking this, we can see why does Sandra not live up to this. And that is because Sandra, first of all, has an expired competency here. So this does not count, even though it has a rating. Even if it did count, the rating would not be enough because it is only rated 1. Same goes for this one, that is rated 2. It's also expired. This one is simply not achieved. Actually, sorry, I'm messing things up here. These are expiring. So she does not live up to it, and they are expiring. Whereas this one down here with implementing sustainable practices, she has lived up to, but is expiring soon. This list here always sorts by criticality, so what is not accomplished or what is about to expire. These top 4 items here are not accomplished, therefore they're at the beginning. These ones are noticed as about to expire, whereas this one is accomplished, about to expire, still counts, and this one is in date and lives up to the requirements. So this lets us also see how far away are we actually from being at the correct stage with these roles. We also have the option in our configuration to change this yes or no indicator here to be a percentage indicator. How many percent of the attached skills are they actually living up to? When we go to our own profile, so as a learner, we have the option to request ratings from people. So I'm on my own page here, and I'm able to go in here and say, show me certifiers for this skill. And again, unfortunately, there's no one eligible to rate me in these tasks, but I will be able to select a certifier that I want to rate me. And then I can select, as if I was making a new rating, I can select what do I think my rating should be. I can add a comment, and that comment then goes to the certifier, who is then able to open it the same way that they could open the upcoming expiries and see what rating have I requested, when did I request it, what comments do I have. So this enables a self-sustaining environment of these skills management where the learners themselves are able to open, say, an iPad or go on a computer, find themselves after having completed training or similar, and request a rating from an eligible certifier. The last module, and now I have expired my login here. The last module that is really interesting is the KPI dashboard. And this is a bit of an outdated module that we're working on refreshing to make it more useful, but this allows us to see a variety of data as it happens over time and in total. So where the matrix is intended to be looking at individuals, how are we doing, how is Sandra doing here, for example, how is Thomas doing here? The KPI dashboard here is intended to look at entire departments and similar at once. I'm just going to check on Sandra here. What is her department? Maybe I should check on Thomas instead, if eligible. He's in marketing in Denmark. Let's then look at a variety of skills for that area. Select some functional competencies I want to measure for. And then I want to see this on behalf of marketing in Denmark. The charts that we're generating here will then show us how are we doing as a whole. We can see there's actually only 3 people who are registered as learners in our application within this department and with these functional competencies. We then see how are our ratings distributed. We have 24 ratings of 0 among these 3 learners, 1 rating of 1, 1 rating of 4, 4 ratings of 6. This lets us know that we are severely behind in rating all of these people in the skills that are actually applied to them. By clicking this chart, I can go in and try to inspect a lot of the data. So who is it that is not living up to things? Who has what rating in here? We can select and say, okay, I want to see who is this one person who has a rating 3 in conducting tests and assessments. Filter on the selected data, and then we will have a list here below saying who is actually the top learner that we have within this area, and that is Thomas Herb. I can do the same if I want to see who is it that has a rating 0. It's a rating 0 for using measuring instruments, so I can have a list of who should I address with this lack of skills. We can also see that the other skills in here have not been rated at all for these people, and that's because they're not applied to them. So each of these bars or barriers here denote when it's a different functional competency. The other options we have in here is the profiles filter, and this is a bit lackluster one because we need to associate this with a job code. And I don't think I have the job code for him ready, but essentially it measures how many people are completing the profile and how many are not completing the profile as a whole. Lastly, timeline here lets us see how are we developing over time. Are we getting new ratings? Are we consistently getting new ratings? Are we upgrading? Are we getting new learners into the system? And how is our ratings distributed over time? I selected the marketing in Denmark department again, so we should only see 3 learners. And now we're just waiting for the data to come in with what skills do they have, how have their ratings improved over time, and so on. And it seems we might have a lackluster response here, unfortunately. Our data is not the best on this system. I think with that, with 18 minutes left, with time to also go over questions and go over some of the project implementation, I will give the word back to Jacob to go over some project stuff and then open for questions.
Yep, and maybe John, you can take on the presentation as well. Thank you, Daniel. As you can see, it's quite a comprehensive, quite a complex might be the wrong word, but a comprehensive tool that allows you to do a lot of things, and hopefully you're able to connect the dots in terms of what this would mean for you internally from an operational point of view. If you go one slide up, John, yeah, this one. So looking at what does a project look like, and obviously this can come in many forms and shapes, but we've chosen to have an implementation approach that's very much aligned with what you would know from SuccessFactors. So going through a funnel of workshops where we start by assessing your requirements, then tapping into those requirements, designing around those, and then basically you validating the solution and us finalizing the design. Based on that, we'll do a migration of if you have already existing skills and competencies. Otherwise, we do have a framework that allows you to work with a baseline of competencies and skills, but typically customers would have their own library that needs to be converted into to our application. And then it goes through a UAT, obviously, and then you go live. It's not a heavy project as such, so the resource consumption is on the lower side. As you would see in any other implementation, the subject matter expert is where we would need to tap into your brains and your knowledge on your processes and configuration of your organization. But other than that, it's a fairly lightweight approach. We typically see an implementation time around 3 to 4 months, but as I'll allude to in a second, we can do this much faster if there is a burning platform. As with all our products, there is a three releases a year where we enhance the functionality, add customer improvements, ideas, etc. to the tool. We are just about to release our newest version in November of Certify Comply and the rest of our product platform. So in November we'll have new functionality coming out, and that's also the reason why Daniel today is working on a system with less optimal data, so to say. There is a dedicated support line which also goes across all our products. You'll have access to a ServiceNow entry point that we provide, and then obviously for fixes, for service requests, etc., we are there to help you and make sure that the solution fits and works. Yep. John, if you switch one down, then as mentioned, just taking a example that we just recently completed. So we had a global construction company that approached us because they'd actually lost their license to operate, or was very close to get into a non-conformity scenario with losing their ISO 901, their ISO 1401, and other certificates as well. And we've actually managed within a number of weeks, or a few weeks, to turn that situation around and provide them with a platform for the next audit to be a sounding success, and with the input from the auditors that they had revoked their license to operate. Short comparison between our application and at least what we know of standalone solutions out there. So we are built natively on SAP BTP, meaning that we have all the services, all the bells and whistles from the BTP platform. That also means that we natively integrate with SuccessFactors, working with real-time data, working with the role-based permissions, and so on. From SuccessFactors, tapping into the MDF objects of SuccessFactors. So we don't really have any limitations when it comes to our integration with SuccessFactors. Like Daniel showed, integration to learning, integration to some of the other elements where there is a cross-section to skills and compliances. It's a SAP Fiori user-based experience. Again, that is the requirements from SAP when we are working this closely aligned with SAP. And then obviously we benefit from all the continued innovations from BTP. Right now, this means, for instance, AI, which is top of the ticket. But as this is a development platform, we continuously see the strong muscle of SAP being able to allow us to continually grow the service, as we just seen. Yeah. So John, if you skip one ahead. Do we have, John, any questions? Or are there any questions that needs to be addressed for either me or Daniel? Yeah.
I have a few questions, Jacob. So I'm just conscious of the time, so let me just get straight into them. And this is a very good question. This is regarding audit controls, and how does Certify and Comply support audit controls, and is there mechanisms in place to do that?
Yeah, so in general, auditors that we've seen with our customers are generally doing spot checks. So they ask to see a specific employee skills at a certain point in time. And of course, we have the option to both go back in time and forward in time when we're looking at a user's skills. We also have the option of what we call accolades, which provides a readable printout of what are the skills at this moment in time for this person. The other options in here is, of course, the matrix, like I showed, that shows exactly when or what level are people at. But in general, what we see is spot checks. Other options surrounding this is supported by the exports, where we can export exactly when was a competency achieved, when is it expiring, and what type of competency is it. So there's a lot of options for both accessing it at a high level in terms of audits. How many people do you have with this skill? How many people do you have at this level? But also from an individual audit perspective with, does this person have the right to work in this position or with these items?
Thanks, Dan. Another question. This one is from Louise. Thank you, Louise. Roles and responsibilities which are required from both the customer and the PXM soft team during the implementation.
Yeah, so during implementation, as Jacob said, we work closely with the internal subject matter expert of the client to get an understanding of what is it you want to accomplish, what skills do you already have. As part of the process, we also try to identify who is actually going to be maintaining and using the system going forward. With that, we typically see that the customers select a centralized function that has control of all of the configuration, and then they delegate the maintenance of, for example, catalog to a specific person in a location or similar. They then have responsibility for maintaining the catalog, and then the responsibility essentially flows down through these roles. So then you may have a shop manager who is a certifier. They're eligible to rate people, but not to create new competency in the catalog. And you have people like managers who are just able to view the different data here. All of these roles are, of course, set up in SuccessFactors, and we can use all of the relationships that are known from SuccessFactors, such as direct reports or people in same location or people in same department or a combination thereof. So we really have a lot of flexibility in who is allowed to do what, and we can delegate it based exactly on what you want as a customer. Typical question we have from clients and during demos and so on is, where is this data actually stored? So where does the data that we're creating reside, and who has ownership of it, and so on? And as Jacob said, the application itself is built on SAP Business Technology Platform, meaning the application is actively running there. But the data itself that we create, the data we store, all of our configurations, all of our user data is stored directly in SuccessFactors as what's called metadata framework objects. That means that your data stays within your own system. It never leaves. It's not able to be taken away by us or anyone else. It stays within your SuccessFactors along with all the other data. That is also what allows us to chain it directly to the people that you have in SuccessFactors as users, which also lets you use retention policies within SuccessFactors.
I think this is the last question actually, and this one is from Stina. Thanks for the question, Stina. Just in regards to legacy, I'm not sure if you cover this, but legacy data and the migration process, how simple or complicated is that?
So our migration process is essentially just imports as you know it, similar to SuccessFactors, where we set up an Excel file or a CSV file that contains what are the skills, what are the ratings, and so on. Of course, we first need to define what skills exist in our catalog in order for us to import something. But the legacy data in terms of catalog is very simple. We transform it to a format that is understandable by our application and imported. And then all of the legacy user data, so all of the past ratings going years back, is something that we can also import in bulk. So as long as we can transform this, as long as we have the dates and the ratings that were and when they were achieved, when they expired, and so on, then it's as simple as one big CSV file that we import, and then everyone has their skill history present in the system.
Great. Thank you, Daniel. And on that note, I'm just going to hand it over to Jacob maybe for the last few words. I know we've got a couple of events coming up as well that maybe some of the attendees on this morning's session might be attending. I think one of them is in the Black Diamond in Copenhagen. But we're also doing a session on document management with Linda Christensen. That's also going to happen over the next few weeks. But I'll just hand it back to you, Jacob. Last few words. And thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, and I think thank you, John. And I think my last few words is obviously thanks for taking the time to being with us today, and saying hopefully you can see through the complexity. There is complexity in these processes, and hence trying to cover all might come across as a system with complexity. But what the experience that we have from customers and the feedback is that it's really easy to use, and it provides exactly the needed governance and level of compliance tools for them to operationalize skills and competencies for a primarily operational workforce. So hopefully you got this from the session today, and then on the last note, as John just mentioned, we are hosting a session in the Black Diamond on the 24th of October. If you skip one ahead, John, I think, and where Daniel will be present, and we'll have customers and other present that actually uses the tool to present and dive much more into the capabilities and the capabilities of this application. If it has any relevance for you, if you're close by, then please do accept this invite. Reach out to me or reach out to whoever you might know from PXM or Gaudi, and we'll be happy to see you in this event. We'll be presenting both Certify Comply, but also document management, our org modeling tool, our time tracking plus, etc. So if there's an interest, please do let us know. And on that note, thanks again for taking the time. I really hope it provided the value, and do reach out if this has sparked an interest. Then we'll be happy to cater for further talks.